Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full review of the Asics Metaspeed Ray. The Metaspeed Ray is an all-new carbon plate addition to the Asics lineup this year, joining the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo and Sky Tokyo. It sits a little bit above those shoes in terms of price, and it's the lightest Asics racing shoe ever made. It costs £265 in the UK and $300 in the US. It weighs just 136 grams or 4.8 ounces in my UK size 9, which is a US men's 10, which is the lightest shoe I've ever tested quite comfortably. It's 20 grams lighter even than the Edge and Sky Tokyo, which are also very lightweight, like 75 grams lighter than the Alpha Flight. It's crazy light, basically. And that's despite the fact you've got a full stack height here. It's 39.5mm at the heel, 34.5mm at the forefoot for a 5mm drop. So the stack is in line with other racing shoes that are sneaking below that 40mm limit set by World Athletics. So the main reason this shoe is so light is the midsole, which is entirely made of FF Leap foam. This is the softest, springiest and lightest foam in the Asics range. It's used in combination with FF Turbo Plus in the Metaspeed Tokyo shoes, but it's all FF Leap in the Asics Metaspeed Ray. And you also don't have a full-length carbon plate here. The plate is a teardrop shape and runs from the forefoot to the back of the midfoot, and not having a full-length plate means that it does save a little bit of weight, but also means it's a little bit less stable at the back of the shoe there. Got a very lightweight and thin matrix upper as well, with really no padding or anything like that around the back of the shoe. And then an Asics grip outsole with, again, very minimal coverage. It's a thin layer. You've got a decent amount on the forefoot, hardly anything at the heel. Everything has been done here to try and make the weight as low as possible. And the results are a very lightweight shoe with a very soft and springy foam in the midsole.
Quick word on fit then, and I tested my regular size in Asics, which is a UK 8.5, US 9.5. Now, the moment you lace up the Ray, you see there's a lot of clearance towards the end of the toe box. But the bit further back up the shoe is all quite snug and narrow, definitely what you'd call a sort of tight race fit. There is lots of flex in that toe box and everything feels sort of airy up there. But things are a little bit narrow. My little toe was actually quite hemmed in. But on the flip side, you kind of need that sort of hugging fit because these uppers are so minimal. The foot sort of needs to be locked in to minimise the movement on the platform. Now, the outside edge of my foot maybe spills over the side of the platform, true to size, bit in this shoe. But I get that in the Metaspeed Sky Paris as well without it being a really big problem. I didn't find it problematic using this shoe. And I got good midfoot lockdown. And the slightly offset laces really helped for security across that bit. There's really nothing to the tongues. So if you need to lace them tighter, you're not going to get much protection from the lace pinch here. And these tongues can be a bit flimsy and a bit fussy to get in place as well. Then there's these really minimal heel collars with very little to no support at all. I did fear for my heels from sort of rubbing over the distances, but for the time I clocked on my feet, I had no problems there. I did have a little bit of slipping in the heel, and the heel platform is quite narrow on this shoe with a kind of steep slope that can lead you to feel like you're sliding off the heel platform or swinging sort of the back end of your foot when you're turning, particularly in tight corners. And that will happen whether you're moving fast or not. It did happen when I was moving slow as well. It's obviously accentuated though when you're going faster. But overall, I would probably recommend going true to size in these.
So in terms of fit, I've got the Metaspeed Ray in UK size 8. That is my usual running shoe size, and I would stick to my usual running shoe size if I had the choice again. This is a shoe that absolutely kind of fits like a racing shoe. It's got a very thin, kind of light, breathable upper. It's it's not massively structured. There's a little bit of padding in the heel collar, which thankfully has been just enough, and I haven't had any kind of issues in terms of heel rub or irritation there. In terms of kind of lockdown, I mean, I don't absolutely love the Metaspeed kind of series laces, which generally is the same as the ones on the Sky and the Tokyo. Got a very skinny tongue, which does make getting those two kind of well locked down a little bit tricky to do. Generally, it is a racing profile fit. It does open up in the toe box a fair bit. Now, I've got quite skinny, narrow feet, so that's going to feel like ample room for me. But it could end up being a little bit of a tight squeeze for some people with wider feet, but it does, compared to the kind of back and the middle of the shoe, does open up a fair amount to give you a little bit extra room if you are going to use it for longer distance runs. But yeah, so I would stick to my usual size. I think most people will be fine. Just be aware of the fact that it does narrow a little bit in parts of this shoe, but does kind of offer kind of an open kind of forefoot area to kind of give you room and scope to use this for longer runs.
Here comes the fit of the Asics Metaspeed Ray. I've got my normal size here, which is a UK 9, US 10. It's the same size I use across the Asics range, and I use with the Metaspeed Tokyo shoes as well. I've got a good fit for length, I would say. I think the Metaspeed Ray is maybe a touch narrower than the other shoes in the Asics range, but I have a narrow foot and it fits me very well. The upper, despite being very thin and with minimal padding, has held my foot nice and securely throughout fast runs, and even with some lateral movement of the foot because of the slightly unstable base beneath it. My foot's been going from side to side. The upper has held me in place when running at fast paces. So yeah, no complaints. It's a really good lightweight upper. On to the run test then, and I've done around 70 kilometers in the Asics Metaspeed Ray across a mix of hard runs, training at all of my race paces in the shoe, going down to very fast reps at the track and doing long tempo and threshold sessions on the road as well. And it is extremely fun to run in this shoe. It is an unbelievable ride, really. It's so soft, so bouncy, propulsive, fast, fun, and really lightweight. You do feel how light this shoe is on the foot when comparing it to other carbon shoes. Like, I've done a couple of runs where I've swapped this with the other Asics Metaspeed Tokyo shoes, and it is noticeable that the Ray is lighter, softer, springier than those shoes. It's got a pretty phenomenal design all round, and it delivers a very fun ride that's also extremely fast. And the fact there's no plate at the back of the shoe does lead to more concerns about stability there, but does mean it's really soft to land there as a heel striker, and it really does create that real sink in and then a huge amount of bounce. It's not like a foam that you sink in and get lost in. It's not sapping energy at all. It's really bouncy and responsive, but also very soft to land in. And every time I've run the shoe, it's been noticeable to me that I have been running faster than I expected, and it's made hard paces feel more effortless than even other carbon plate shoes. Like, early on, I was thinking when I was running in it, this is a good shoe, it's a good carbon plate shoe. I think there's too many potential drawbacks here to really be one that I'd be that excited to recommend or buy myself. But then I did a 10k run at marathon pace as the second run, of a double. Like, in the afternoon of a double, I ran 10k at 3:30 a k pace, and I was listening to football and just ticking along. I just realised how comfortable it felt, how easy it felt, and more so than any other shoe. I've done that run loads of times in lots of different shoes, including my favourite carbon plate racing shoes, and it just felt that bit better in the Metaspeed Ray. And it's happened enough times in this shoe now. I don't think it's just a coincidence of timing that I've been really fit or well fueled or whatever for those runs. Like, there's been lots of runs where I've gone out in it and my heart rate's been lower than I expect for the pace, and lower than my heart rate is when running that pace in other really good shoes. I think it really does produce the goods in terms of an efficient ride, a fast ride, and makes your race paces feel that bit more comfortable, especially at that higher end of race paces. So initially I thought, given the very lightweight design, the fact it's not the most stable, this would be a shoe that I'd probably have to reserve at like a short distance shoe, really. But actually, it's definitely felt better for me at half marathon and marathon paces when you're more in control. And actually, when you're more in control and running at a pace that you're comfortable at for longer, you can kind of lock in and control the slightly wilder aspects of the shoe and harness all the bounciness you get from that midsole and the lightness there to really run very effectively for long periods. Like, how that would feel at the back end of those long events, like a half marathon or a marathon, if you haven't really carried your form all the way through. There might be some risks there, given that it is quite a soft and wobbly shoe, but it's felt amazing to me when running long sections at marathon pace or half marathon pace, and that's where it's excelled the most to me. I've gone down to faster like 5k paces on the track, and it feels good for those, but actually when I'm really trying to run hard like that, I think a slightly firmer platform works better for me. I feel a bit more in control then, and I feel like I can push against it a bit better. And then the lack of a full length plate was also a concern to me. I am a heel striker. I thought, there's no plate at the back there. Does that mean I'm going to miss out on some kind of leverage and propulsion? And is it going to be too unstable? It hasn't been the case in terms of the runs I've done. Like, I felt very good in the shoe, even as a heel striker. Like, the transition's been really good for me onto the forefoot, and I've got a nice amount of bounce off the toes of it as well. So yeah, it has been an absolute joy to run in for sure. But, and there was always going to be a but coming with the Metaspeed Ray, it is soft and unstable. I think it's not a shoe that's going to suit loads of people very well. It doesn't cope very well with like my warm-up paces. Like, once I start hitting my straps and I'm down below 3:30 a k pace or even 3:45 a k pace for kind of more relaxed tempo sessions, it feels really good, but it's not a shoe that is great to kind of warm up and cool down in. And I'm not sure it does that well at slower paces, because you spend more time, I guess, transitioning through this wobbly midsole, and you get a bit more of the wobble. And it is a wobbly midsole. Like, this is definitely not a stable shoe. You're going to have some inward rolling in it. Like, I don't know how much of a problem that is, really. I know people get very worried about pronation, and when they see the cutaways of me running and my foot will be rolling inwards, it's not something that's ever concerned me in any race or anything like that. I think it's something that happens a lot with super shoes in general, but it's certainly more noticeable and exaggerated with a shoe as soft as the Metaspeed Ray. So that will be a concern for lots of people. And also I think durability is not going to be a big positive of this shoe. Like it's not looking too bad for me, but you can see I start to rip up the foam a little bit at the back there, which I do on the Metaspeed Tokyo shoes as well. But the very lightweight design just feels like it's not necessarily going to be most solid over long-term use, and it is a bit more expensive than the other Asics shoes and lots of carbon shoes out there, and you're paying a premium for that lightness really, not for the durability. So that might be a worry down the line for sure.
So in terms of my running time in the Metaspeed Ray, I've done over 50k in this shoe now. I've used it for track sessions, I've raced in it, I've attempted to do some longer running time in it as well, and I'll get into how that went on. Now, the things I like about the Metaspeed Ray, I think the first thing, it is just super light, and if you like a lightweight shoe, I mean, this does just disappear when it is on. Now, in terms of the kind of ride, the feeling, I mean, it is super soft. You know, the only thing I can really compare it to is the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, which again has that kind of softer feel in terms of its midsole. The FF Leap here is really, really super soft. Just even squeezing into it, you can just see, and it gives you a sense of what you can expect to get from this shoe. Now, normally we'd probably associate softer, plusher foams with kind of comfortable, kind of, you know, easy riding shoes. But in terms of how it works in the Metaspeed Ray, what you're getting in terms of the carbon plate, the rocker design, it all lends itself to being a shoe that is built for running faster. This is not a shoe that you can ease off in, and when you do, it feels very awkward to do that, and it introduces that kind of more unstable feel that naturally is in, and you do get on this shoe. But when I have run at my kind of 5k, 10k pace, that's where it's felt best at, I think. When I've kind of got up to kind of half marathon pace, again, it feels good. You can coast in this shoe. What I would say is when I try to run longer in this shoe, I think one run in particular, when I went out, I hadn't slept very well. I wasn't feeling great. It was hot as well. And I started off well in that run. It felt good, felt fast, it felt smooth, and kind of very, you know, kind of very quick to kind of transition in this shoe. But when I had moments where I was tired, I wasn't really at it. It felt a very kind of tough shoe to be in. And you know, as I said, it's not a shoe that you can really easily ease off in at all. And it's the kind of question mark I'd have over going and trying to run longer and cruise in a shoe, where I think unless I am at my fittest, you know, best shape, this is a shoe that I think, you know, outside of that or not being there, it's going to be a tough shoe to run in. But when I have felt good at those kind of 5k, 10k paces, the shoe has really come into its own. As I said, it is definitely unstable. I think, as I mentioned in that race test that I did, I think particularly when you're cornering, it takes a while to get around those corners. I think if you've got long stretches of road in a race, then absolutely it's going to feel great to use it in that kind of environment. But yeah, I think, you know, definitely there's some unstable elements just brought to, you know, the fact that you've got that kind of soft foam, very soft plush foam that you're getting here in the Metaspeed Ray. In terms of durability, I mean, I'm not expecting massive durability here. I am already starting to see signs of wear in the outsole. Not surprising, really. You know, there's not a huge amount of rubber here. The weight is really kept down on this shoe. And you can see around the heel area, I'm seeing some, you know, kind of foam kind of peeling off. So, you know, this isn't a shoe I expect to, you know, use for training and racing. I think you maybe kind of go out at it, maybe for a run or two at your kind of race pace, and then save it for race day. And, you know, make the best use of, you know, what you're going to get in terms of performance. I think, you know, in terms of grip, the grip has been okay. You know, generally I've been in dry conditions, so I can't really vouch for how it's like in wetter conditions. But in terms of, you know, my runs, it's been absolutely fine. But, you know, in terms of a outsole on a performance shoe, this isn't top tier. It's giving you just enough in terms of grip to mainly keep the overall weight of the shoe down. So yeah, absolutely, I've had a good time in the Metaspeed Ray. I do think that it is a shoe that is fast, it is lively, definitely unstable at times if you're not, you know, kind of maintaining that kind of faster and, you know, pacing, and also kind of maintain that good running technique and form as well.
So in testing, I've clocked up around 20 miles in the Asics Metaspeed Ray Tokyo. I've done a real mixed bag from an easy 3-mile warm-up to a 1-mile all-out race that came just after that. I've also done a couple of 6 or 7 mile mixed pace efforts, and I did a few sets of 400 metre reps in it as well around my local park, which is on sort of pavement rather than on a track. Let's start with the real standout for the Ray, and that is just how light this shoe is. On paper, it's 50 grams lighter than the Edge and the Paris Tokyo, and this really is a barely there shoe. that's built for race day freedom. There's really not much to it when you're talking about the uppers. It's impressive how they've made it so light with that big stack of foam. They actually really disappear on the foot, and the Matrix upper, impressively airy and light. Does mean, as I said, that there's not much structure, but I still felt relatively well held on the platform in the forefoot. So I'm not sure it will suit those who need more security and support. You know, you're getting nothing from the sidewalls here. There's really not much of it at all. So if you need more structure in a carbon race shoe, I think this might make the Ray a bit of a risky choice. Moving on to the ride, and I think you notice that there's a minimal carbon plate here that's skewed to the forefoot of the shoe. The result is a softer and more cushioned ride, more bounding, less stiff. I think that's the big difference here between this shoe, the Ray, and the Metaspeed Sky Paris. I've not run in the Tokyo Paris yet, so I can't confirm that. But I would say there's less kind of firmness and snap in the Ray. That's kind of replaced with more bounce and a bit more squish and return. That reduced stiffness, I think, makes for a whole lot more movement in the midsole as well. So it's not unlike the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, though the fact this midsole is one piece with no cutaways helps it feel smoother in the transitions than some of the decoupled rivals. And that full midsole of Flight Foam, Leap Foam has that same sort of deep compression and rebound that you get from Saucony's Incredi Run. So it does take some controlling, but when you're engaging the shoe right, it's brilliantly lively. Though, as I said, they do struggle a little bit in tight corners. I got more out of them when I was bashing out in straight lines on good surfaces than when I went into kind of the twists and turns on that mile test. One thing I was surprised by, comparatively speaking, was how comfortable, cushioned and smooth and runnable this shoe is, even when you're moving at slower paces. It's obviously not a shoe you're going to pick to go out and plod in, but for that easy 3 mile warm up, which is well below my kind of, well, it's like 8-minute miles for me, which is well below marathon pace. It just sort of did quite well to get me there. That's sort of slower than marathon pace. It's kind of remarkably well. It's unstable for sure and clearly built for attacking the miles with your best uprights or punching form. But I think I'd trust this one to get me home on the marathon struggle bus more than I would some more exposed carbon shoes. They are protective in terms of the impact coming up through the road, and I didn't feel too exposed overall. You can feel the accentuated rocker as well. That moves you off really quite quickly. There's not much going on in the heel, and all of that gets a bit wobbly if you land too far back in the shoe. But when you're moving right, I think it all adds up to a pleasantly punchy ride. Verdict then, and I think the Asics Metaspeed Ray are the real deal. Unfathomably light, highly capable, serving up a really powerful blend of speed and agility. Shoes do not come much more lightweight and nimble than these. They are soft and protective but punchy and energetic. The ride is exactly what you look for in a fast shoe to go chasing your best times over a range of distances. Does it have marathon PB potential? Yes, it does. Does it keep the legs feeling fresh for longer? Yes, it does. I think for many runners, it could well be a brilliant half marathon shoe. For some runners, certainly as well, it's going to be a great city marathon option. Basically, anywhere you're able to run in long straight lines, I think it will work. I'd be happy to lace it up for faster miles in a big high pace or interval marathon training run, but I definitely say that this is a shoe for the form efficient. It won't leave you for dead when you're struggling, but to get the most out of it, you're going to want to be flying. And it caters better certainly for mid to forefoot strikers than heel strikers. The further you land back, the less control you've got, partly due to that plate placement, but also because of the heels and how soft they are. Then we come to the price, and this is the sticky bit. There's a pretty big premium to pay for that ultra lightweight performance. In carbon shoe world, it's priced in the likes of the Puma Fast R3, the Adios Pro 4 from Adidas, the Nike Vaporfly 4. It's better than the latter two of those. I'd probably pick the Puma over this Asics for the marathon because I prefer a shoe with a bit more snap and stiffness. I'm yet to get into the Sky Tokyo, so I can't call that one. So while I think this is a truly excellent shoe, I don't think this is one that will suit every runner. I don't think you necessarily need to pay the premium for a shoe that could unlock your best. But if you can afford it and you want a fun, lively, all-out racer, I'd say go for it. It's a great shoe. I think that absolutely delivers. I've enjoyed all my miles in it. Question on durability as well, perhaps. You know, I haven't taken it for the marathon distance yet, but there isn't much by way of kind of protection here for that foam. So how long it will last, how many miles you'll rack up in it for the price, I'm not too sure. So there is that conundrum. But if you can afford it, I'd say give it a whirl. I think it's a cracking all-out race shoe.
So my take on the Asics Metaspeed Ray, this is a shoe that I've really enjoyed running and also racing in as well. It is fast, it is bouncy, it is fun, and all the kind of things you want in a racing shoe, and obviously super light as well too. Now, in terms of whether I would turn to it for a race, I think I haven't really changed or moved away from my feelings of kind of my early run-outs with this shoe. I still would feel more comfortable using it for 5k and 10k races, using it at my 5k 10k pace. I think half marathon distance, I think feasibly yes, you could use it for that, and I think you'd get a good experience. I've just, from what I've seen in terms of my kind of longer runs where I've started to tire a little bit, my technique and form has not been absolutely perfect. This is a shoe that's going to feel a little bit more awkward to get on with. I think that's something to keep in mind with the Metaspeed Ray. It is unstable. It is a shoe that if you're not, I don't think, really out and kind of hitting your hardest, fastest kind of paces, it can be an awkward one to be out in. Now, in terms of how it compares to the other Asics Metaspeed shoes, now I haven't spent enough time in the Sky and the Edge Tokyo yet, but I have, used the previous versions of the shoes, so I'm really kind of referencing from that point of view. I would feel more assured running in those shoes over the Metaspeed Ray. I just think in terms of how that cushioning and that midsole feels, I would feel more comfortable if I did have to ease off a little bit. Those are still aggressive shoes, still unstable shoes, and not really built for where, you're not in your best shape. But I do think I'd feel more comfortable with the feel of those shoes and how that feels to run a little bit longer in. So as I said, I have enjoyed running in a Metaspeed Ray. It is expensive, more expensive than in Metaspeed Sky and Edge Tokyo. And I think if you are looking at those kind of super shoes, then you're absolutely going to get a good experience here. I just think about those things that I talked about, particularly how you're going to use a shoe, what distances you're going to use it for. Because I don't think it's going to work for everyone across kind of those shorter and longer distances. I think it might work for people who want to use it for longer distances, but I don't necessarily think that's going to apply it to everyone. So yeah, good time in the Metaspeed Ray. Definitely a fun shoe. Definitely a fast shoe, one that I would probably stick to using for my shorter distances.
My verdict on the Asics Metaspeed Ray is that the performance level is incredible here. I do think this is a very high performing shoe, and if you can harness the strength of the shoe and the weaknesses don't bother you so much, I think this might be the best racing shoe on the market for lots of runners out there, especially over those longer distances. I think for shorter distances, personally, I would want a firmer platform myself. I think a slightly more stable platform as well. But again, some people might prefer this. But I think when you are looking at those long runs, it's very soft. It's going to really look after your legs as long as you can carry your form through and aren't worried too much about wobbling a bit in it. There are a lot of caveats to the Metaspeed Ray, which I'll come on to, which probably mean it isn't the smartest buy out there. There are lots of amazing carbon plate shoes that I think can deliver the same level of performance with a slightly more stable and natural ride and a slightly more durable design, that kind of thing. But I would be lying if I put you off the Metaspeed Ray by not really expressing how much I have loved running in it at a range of fast paces. It's a shoe that I've liked more and more as time has gone on, and it really clicked with me about 3 runs in. I thought, this is a really fantastic shoe and I love running in it, and it's making these fast runs feel fantastic. But then on to the caveats. It's not stable, it's not very durable, it's a bit more expensive. I think for most runners, and myself included, I would look at the Asics Metaspeed Sky Tokyo or Edge Tokyo first. I prefer the feel of the Sky Tokyo, but the Edge Tokyo is also a very good shoe, and I think they're more durable shoes. You are getting that balance of foams in the midsole where you have both the FF Leap and the FF Turbo Plus, which gives you a really nice balance of the softness, the bounciness, and the firmer FF Turbo Plus foam, which gives you a bit more responsiveness under the forefoot, I feel, particular with the Sky, and you've got a full length plate there, a bit more stable. There's a little bit more rubber on the outsole. They're still incredibly lightweight. They're a little bit cheaper. They're probably the smarter bets in the Asics range for most people, and I think the Sky Tokyo would be my pick of the bunch if you are looking at one Asics shoe. Despite how good the Metaspeed Ray feels, the Sky is a very safe bet for me. Despite it's not the most stable shoe itself or anything like that, but it has a bit more stability to it, and the full length plate I think really works well in rolling you forward. I've done, like I say, a couple of track sessions where I've used all of the Metaspeed shoes, and for me the Sky feels better than the Edge. I just get a slightly poppier ride from it. Some people disagree. The Edge is also a very good shoe, and then when it comes to the Ray, it's almost a different option rather than one that's a better option than the Metaspeed Tokyo shoes for me. It's a little bit more expensive, sure, but it's mostly providing a different ride feel with the much softer foam, the bouncier feeling, whereas the Metaspeed Sky and Edge have a slightly firmer transition, faster transition, that kind of thing. So I do think it's an option in the Asics range people will like and maybe prefer to those shoes, but the Sky and the Edge are safer bets and amazing racing shoes. And the Puma Fast R3 comes in around the same price, and that's again got a firmer ride, much more rocketed ride, really efficient ride. And I think that efficiency you get from the Puma is something I'm not sure that the Metaspeed Ray will provide to the same extent over the course of a long race. If you do start to lose a bit of form and worry about the softness underfoot, I think the Puma Fast R3 will just keep rolling you on. It's not as comfortable and as fun maybe as the Metaspeed Ray because it isn't quite as soft underfoot, but it's brutally efficient almost, the Fast R3, and propelling you forward and rolling you on. And again, I think that's Probably a shoe I'd lean to recommending ahead of the Metaspeed Ray, despite the fact, again, it's not a stable shoe. It's not a shoe that will necessarily suit everyone out there, but I do think it's pretty got a slightly more reliable design that might work for more people more assuredly than the Metaspeed Ray. And some other options out there. The Alphafly 3 is a fair bit heavier than the Metaspeed Ray, and actually I think there are some similarities here, and the Alphafly has got quite a soft feeling as well, but the Metaspeed Ray is much lighter, like 75 grams lighter, softer, bouncier. I think it's a better shoe than the Alphafly 3, but again, the Alphafly 3 I think can provide you a bit more support and work very well over the course of a marathon for lots of different runners, whereas the Metaspeed Ray might appeal to a slightly smaller subset. I think you have to be really into these soft shoes, running at a pretty good pace, I think, to get the most out of the Metaspeed Ray and rely on it through the course of a long race. And then there is the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2, which is the other super soft shoe that we've tested this year. Now that does have a full length plate. I think it's got, I don't think as impressive a foam in the midsole as the one on the Metaspeed Ray. I think you get more bounce back from the FF Elite foam and the Asics. The way it sinks in, they're both very soft, but I think you get a more propulsive feel from the Metaspeed Ray, despite the fact it doesn't have a full plate. Endorphin Elite 2 though is brilliant. Like, it is a really good shoe. It's again a bit wobbly. You have got a full length plate though, and I do think it is a touch more stable and in control maybe than the Metaspeed Ray, with the Asics feeling like even higher and softer underfoot somehow at the back of the shoe in particular. But that would be potentially another option if you do like this idea of a very soft, springy carbon shoe, but aren't necessarily keen to go for the Metaspeed Ray because of durability, or the fact I think it is even less stable than the Saucony. So yeah, a few different shoes out there I think would be more reliable picks for runners, maybe slightly cheaper picks, maybe slightly more durable picks. Certainly the Asics Metaspeed Tokyo shoes would probably be the more reliable picks, but yeah, the Metaspeed Ray is probably the most fun I've had in a shoe this year in terms of a carbon plate racing shoe, and yeah, it is pretty tremendous. It's just not the safest bet out there. That's our review of the Asics Metaspeed Ray. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.